Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is Listening Beyond the Sound Bites. Jennifer Harrison is joining me today as co-host. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And our keeping up with our candidate interviews, we have Tom Nelson, who's a Republican who's running for the House of Representatives in Chittenden 8-1. Welcome, Tom.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have to somehow understand about Chittenden County. Everybody comes in with all these different numbers, and but Burlington is where they have the 6
Senate. Well, it's the county, but people feel it's all Burlington because it's not separated by the towns within the county. And I understand there's a movement afoot that might change.
Yeah, next year it's supposed to change where they're going to split it up, and it's one for each section that they're going to make up. Which, to tell you the truth, because it's like a cabal in the State House with the 6 senators, and since there's very few senators, that's a big chunk of.
That's a lot
of
right.
the senators, and if
Right.
they actually work together, and if it's about Chittenden or something that impacts Chittenden, they obviously all work together. So
Yes.
anyway, well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how we know each other, Tom.
We do, right? Well, you want me to start with that?
No, I'm
okay.
only kidding.
So I'm from Barry, Vermont. I grew up in Barry, and I've been married, we just were mentioning there, to a beautiful girl from the Northeast Kingdom, Estelle, for 35 years this week. And we have 2 grown children, a daughter and a son.
Nice.
And my daughter's out in Denver as a sports medicine specialist, and my son is in Fairport, New York as a civil engineer.
Whoa, nice.
Long way away, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but they're doing well.
That's great.
Yeah, and I've been in Vermont public safety for just about 40 years now.
That's excellent. But you've been around other places. You told me you've been working at other law enforcement jobs.
I have had, so my primary job out of college when I got my degree in criminal justice was Vermont State Police for 28 and a half years.
Right.
I retired as a captain there in charge of special investigations. But the other positions I've worked in federal law enforcement have been in Vermont. So
great.
I work with Department of Homeland Security as a criminal analyst. I work for the U.S. Marshals as a court security officer in the federal court.
Great.
And I actually still have a contract with them as a district security officer out of the Burlington office.
Great.
And I have my own consulting business in
Excellent.
public safety.
Busy guy. Good for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Got to keep busy, right?
Yes, you do. I figured that out. Keeps you young. Go ahead.
It does, it does. So I have a question. What are the key priorities that you have discussing with your voters and hope to pursue in the legislature?
Sure. The big priorities I see are financial here. As everybody knows, we're dealing with COVID. We've shut down a lot of things here in the spring. A lot of businesses are struggling now, and there's still tens of thousands of Vermonters that are unemployed. Add that to an older population with a difficult economy, I think, to begin with. We should really focus on getting through the effects of COVID, helping people out, get their jobs back, get the businesses going.
Right.
And then we've had an issue with high taxes and less businesses for a long time. We need to work on that as well.
I don't know why they don't get that too high taxes. I think we're 4th in the nation. And one year when we were interviewing candidates, I asked, and regardless of party, everybody said high taxes, the education, and the environment, like the pension and Lake Champlain and stuff. Everybody heard the same thing. You think we would take care of it in the legislature? No. But so you've been up in the legislature yourself, haven't you, over the years?
I have, actually. So on 2 occasions, or on a number of occasions. Once I was assigned to the security of the Governor Madeline Kuhn, in the 80s.
Oh, back when,
So
yes.
I spent a lot of time there around the legislature. And then toward the end of my career, I was in charge of all the special investigations units, and they reported to me, the Governor's security. So I was there, for
nice.
details over there too.
Excellent.
So I've been around a little bit.
So have you given any thought to what you'd like to accomplish in your first year, given your priorities? And
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd like the financial piece is very, very important. I think remaining stable here. We can't do, I think, what's politics as usual: a new program and then search for a way to pay for it.
Right.
The taxes, fees, assessments, change the title. That's incredibly important because it affects everything else. But also, in terms of accomplishments I have expertise really in criminal justice and public safety, so I think I can add a lot to that. But I would also like to be in any kind of a committee that's involved with promotion of Vermont's businesses.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. There was a guy from one of the marketing companies tried to promote a bill, and he only was asking for like $85,000 to do this whole rebranding of Vermont and things beyond milk and ice cream and cheese, but really look at the technology that we're doing here. But they never liked that idea. I don't know what the problem was, but good luck up there, Tom.
Okay.
In the time of seclusion, how are you reaching out to your voters, and what is your platform?
Sure. So we use social media as much as possible. We use the online media sources locally to reach folks. I am going door to door in a cautious, very cautious manner, and I will leave a door hanger that will have my basic information. And so I do have a website specifically for my campaign, and that's available for people. They find out all about me and if you talk about a platform, I mentioned the recovery from the effects of COVID financially and otherwise. Grow Vermont's economy. In Essex right now, the merger question, which has been around a long time, but it is working more feverishly, I think. There was a 3+3 revision of the select board passed, and
because that made sense to me. You can't have 3 and 2 in a merger. That just does votes when they merge, right? The
select board. So the new governance and the focus was, and it was last town meeting before actually COVID hit. Yeah. And the focus was that there would be equal representation between the town and the village. And there's about the same populations there, and the people liked it. And they voted strongly for it. It was like supposed to be 71%, I think, in the town, and overall 61%.
Great.
For some reason, it hasn't made it in the legislature to be taken up by GovOps on that, which would require a charter change to do that. And so the village has their ideas. Everyone has their ideas, but I think most folks are really in favor of merger in the long run.
I hate to tell you how many times GovOps has had people in from the 2 areas to talk about merging. And one year when I was on GovOps, that was my committee, they were like, you couldn't put them in the same room together. It was sad, but it sounds like this may be it. They may actually do it this time, which makes so much sense.
It sounds good, and I'm told that, and I don't have all the numbers, but 70% of the services are merged already. Oh. So it makes complete sense to make it work.
Sure.
Of course, the devil's in the details and the money involved for both parties and the tax issue and all that.
Good for you. Well, so you were talking about COVID, and I'm sure you've been following this year's taxes. We've got some rainy day funds, and we've got some leftover money. How we did that, I don't know, but we've got some leftover, which is sort of balancing. But all I hear is 2022 is going to be just a nightmare. What are you prepared to do to increase revenue, to lower expenses? Because something's got to give.
Yeah, tough decisions.
Right.
Unfortunately, folks do not, when they get into the legislature or they run, I guess, they don't talk about anything they would trim or cut or take a serious look at.
No, they don't.
You have to just do it, and there's room to find redundancy. There's room to find savings, along the way. And then there are tough decisions that will have to be made. I just don't think that Vermonters can take another tax or an increase. And you were mentioning elderly people.
Those of us who are retired, you just can't. You have so much money.
Yeah.
And by this time, it's pretty much all allocated.
Yes, and we're second, either tied or second or just behind New Hampshire for the 3rd oldest population in the country.
We actually used to be first or second. It's nice to know we're headed in
Right. I mean, I just looked recently, and we were like, very, very close to New Hampshire, but Maine being number 1. And so at this stage of folks' lives, when they're seniors, they need more services from the government. They don't have, their income is probably fixed, their resources are fixed, they don't have more money to pay. So we need better businesses, we need to stimulate them, we need young people to be able to come home from college, and that's, people have heard this a number of times before. Come home from college, set up shop here, and start their careers here and work here, and that's how we solve those types of problems.
Exactly.
I was talking to somebody recently where, as I mentioned, when I was in Governor's Security Unit back in the '80s, I'd go to the governor's office and there were business magazines, and Vermont would be there, finishing in the top 5 for tax burdens.
Yeah.
At the end of my career, some 20 years later,
Right.
I'd go back, and the Douglas administration can stop in there, and the same headlines were
Yeah.
there.
They don't get it.
We're consistently there in high taxes. We just can't.
And now when you look at the cost of schools, I mean, people that are looking from the outside to come in here, and they talk about, well, it's not really like that. I said, it doesn't matter. It's on this survey that we're 5 or 4 or whatever. Who's going to look to come here? They just see it's bad. You know, there's all that income, what do they call it on taxes, deferred income or something, or where you get some extra money depending on your income. But that doesn't show up in those surveys,
Right.
and that's all people see. So
Right.
anyway, it's pretty sad.
So the governor has said that the economy is not quickly coming back. So what would you suggest?
Well, I mean, and I'm not an economist. I've had some conversations actually with Representative Bob Bancroft a lot during the campaign here
Good
to
guy.
understand. And he's as you know, a PhD
Yeah.
in economics, and he's filled me in a lot of good information. 2019 on a national level was a strong, robust economy, and the stock market was booming and that sort of thing, and we benefited from that.
Right.
But all the revenues and things that come into our state come in delayed as normal. So you get them as they come along, and they're going to dry up, and they're not going to be there. So we need to brace ourselves for that. Again, we got to make smart decisions. So I'd call it business as usual. We can't do business as usual. Expand programs, come up with new programs. We have to, and when I say we, I'm talking about the legislature. And I would advocate for that. Making tough decisions, and using the same mentality that a family in Vermont has when they run their household.
Well, you know all about grants, and then they take the money, and it's only supposed to be for 3 years, and then they hire people, and somehow, when that money dries up, it's now become part of the organization, and so they look for more money, and that isn't right. That's
Right.
got to stop, because that's just taken on through the back door, I think.
Yes,
So,
trying to broadcast to the Vermonters that
Right.
we beefed up this program here,
right,
or added more
and they
people.
become dependent on it, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, this is sort of self-serving, but Campaign for Vermont, which this show is part of, is very big on ethics. We fought for years through articles and emails and stuff to get our legislator to look at ethics and to put an ethics bill in. We are this is a big surprise, we are one of 2 states that doesn't have any ethics bill in our legislature at all. So there is an ethics committee which they put together, and the executive director has submitted a list of 10 items that he would like to see in a bill. What do you think of, and they keep saying, well, it's Vermont, everybody knows everybody, but we don't know all about everybody, like where your stocks are and that
Sure.
sort of thing. So what do you think about?
Well, I'm not familiar with your work so far and the details of that.
Yeah.
However, I'm huge on ethics, and I think if you ask like the average person outside of the political system in Vermont and elsewhere, that people when they're in politics, they don't get in trouble, despite what the headlines are.
Right.
So I'm in favor of it.
Good.
I'm big on personal responsibility and integrity.
Good for you.
And that's very huge to me personally,
Right.
and honesty and accountability. I am. And so if we get some teeth, I think you mentioned.
Yes, right. There's no teeth in it at all.
Sure,
So.
there should be.
Yeah.
And then folks, because they've been elected and they're representing the public, they represent the public and they work for the public.
Right.
They're not over the public.
Right.
So they're not to be considered not liable for their actions,
Right.
either in a moral sense or in a legislative duties sense,
Right.
in a criminal sense, in any way.
Good. Yeah, we. I said this. Jim Condos is going to owe me dinner every show. I said Jim Condos and oh my God, forget his name, from up in the Northeast Kingdom years ago. They were the only 2 that stood up and said, "I have to recuse myself because of Jim's job," which he was still working. And I thought, well, good for you, because he realized it was a conflict of interest. And my interest in the ethics is to have a place for Vermonters to come. If they think there's a real problem, they have a place to go, which is confidential. And because right now, where do you go if you really have an issue? So
I think from what I answered earlier, you'd see I'd support.
Yeah, I think so.
Those
Yeah,
moves.
Jim Greenwood. I'm sorry, Jim. I love you. I forgot his name. Shame on me, Jennifer.
So we know what Black Lives Matter stands for, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the protesting in Burlington and Montpelier, and what would you do to bring peace together again?
Okay, so I was present at the pro-police rally in May, as was
Yes,
Pat.
I was, yes.
And I want to emphasize that was a rally. And that was set up legally, lawfully with the State House, signed up. The program was there. And under the Constitution of Vermont and the United States, that's peaceable assembly, which was the right of those folks that wanted to say, we support the police. And the folks that were there identified themselves as BLM were actually engaged in criminal behavior. They were screaming, hollering with sirens and whatnot, and drowning out the folks that were trying to speak. And they did shut the program down a little bit early.
Yeah.
Each time someone from the press went to interview somebody about the rally, they would appear with obscene signs, and they would try to crowd the person, intimidate the person, and get themselves on television. So that's unacceptable behavior. But to the larger point of your question, the protest down in Burlington has been going on for a while. What concerns me is all of these bad protests around, all these riots, okay, have ruined, from what I can gather from the national news that we all look at, have been ruined by agitators outside of them that come in to try to start a riot.
Right.
I'd hate them to get wind of Burlington's encampment and the group staying there for a long time, and some people show up here and then turn that into a violent riot.
I have to tell you, because Guy asked me to speak at that rally, and I knew you were there, and about 3 or 4 other officers, but in plain clothes. Yeah. So I felt I'm okay. They'll protect me. I'm all right. But afterwards, next couple of days, I started thinking about it, and I thought, cripes, what if they threw something at me? What if all it would take is one person to push another, and it would have been bedlam?
Sure.
And I don't think there were any police hiding anywhere like they usually hide them at 133. And I told the commissioner of buildings, he said, well, this is Vermont. I said, no, it's not anymore. I said, you better come up with plan B, because I think somehow you're going to get caught short, and we're going to look pretty foolish not being able to control this.
Sure. And someone get hurt.
Yeah,
exactly. And we don't want that, right?
I like those big water guns that just push them off the street.
Yeah. And clean the
street, put out the fires. It's a multi-purpose thing. Anyway, so speaking of which, the defunding the police mantra, I've been told a million times that they really don't mean defund the police, but I think some of them do.
I think they do. I think that started literally as what folks wanted to have. It makes no sense whatsoever. Pat, I think you and I met in the 80s, maybe?
Oh, down
or
at
so,
the...
when you were on the enforcement unit.
Oh, yeah, with the CVO guys? Or
you were uniformed for DMV, were you not?
No, I was in charge of the CVO officers, commercial vehicle officers, but I was also on the training council when I was commissioner of personnel.
Right.
So I was down at the academy a lot.
So you know as I know. So we're a small state. We've always been a small state, and the law enforcement community is very small. The resources are not high, they're low, and the expectations are high, and we're always being asked to do more. There just is nothing to take away.
Right.
When they talk about examining what you're asking the police to do, that's a great idea, and it happens.
Right.
It's just not on headlines, it happens. What are you doing? You're doing all of these different things. Matter of fact, in the legislature, a new initiative or a new law, sometimes they'll say, who's going to enforce this? And they'll say, well, the state police will, or something. So defunding is not good. It's actually a threat to safety. And I listened to the acting police chief in Burlington not too long ago on the AM 620 show in the morning, and they were talking about that. Their uniform officers' table of organizations is 100. And it took a good 30 years to get to that.
Wow.
But they never have 100.
Right, well, you guys, what is it, 200, and you never have 200, I think, ever.
You never have it. And,
Yeah.
and there's a number of reasons for that. It's a difficult job to begin with. It's not been made any better with this environment for
Right.
that's going on a good 10 years in the media now, at least.
Yeah.
And he was saying and trying to say in a polite way, if you take away 30% of our budget, the talk was 30%. This is we're going to have trouble just responding to emergency calls only.
Right.
Never mind other investigations, just emergency calls.
Right.
So this makes no sense whatsoever, and it's actually a threat. It'd be a threat to the safety of
I
the
like in
community.
Seattle and other places, the mayors and whoever, let them be, until they sort of go to their house.
It seems
And
like
all of a
in
sudden,
Portland there.
they're moving and they're calling for peace and.
There was a headline story saying the Minneapolis City Council president who was doing that,
Right.
and they defunded them to some degree, then was now making complaints about where the police arresting people committing crime.
Hello.
There's a direct correlation
Right.
there.
What do you think about training, though? I mean, I've attended from years ago, and it seemed to me it was pretty inclusive. Maybe not long enough. Maybe that would help, and I think maybe the tactics that could be used may have changed because of the people that we're dealing with now.
Yeah. Well, when you're in law enforcement, the trainings and the topics they respond to the type of crime and the type of instances the police are involved in. So
Right.
they're being
Right.
upgraded on
Oh,
a regular
okay.
basis.
Yeah.
Sadly, weapons they change and they
Yeah.
get more lethal, and the types of crimes people are involved, and the drug issue is
Yeah.
constantly changing and getting more fatal. So those things are always upgraded, and the racial trainings, racial bias trainings, and things have been going on for a while here
Right,
in Vermont. And
right.
Vermont is working very hard at addressing that, the law
Right.
enforcement community and the leaders of the state. So.
It seemed to me in my role as Commissioner of Personnel, which I had twice, I would every once in a while get involved, even though you guys handled it inside. I'd get involved with dealing with some of the officers, and I always thought if you were required to go back to training and maybe 2 strikes and you're out or something. I don't know how much the union fights to keep officers in, but
Yeah.
nobody's mentioned that. I don't know if
yeah.
that's a problem. If there's an officer that shouldn't be in that job, they shouldn't be in the job.
Sure, and the benefits of being a small state, small community, is you stick out like a sore thumb
Yeah, right.
if you're a bad person.
Right.
And there's nobody. The saying goes, right? There's nobody better than more than an honest cop that wants to get rid of a bad cop, and that happens.
Well, that's the truth.
I've arrested police officers.
Have you?
Yes,
Oh, good for you.
and I've done that. And when I became an experienced investigator in the criminal division in my career with the Vermont State Police, it was common for us to assist other police departments with a problem.
Yeah.
They would contact the commissioners
Oh,
through
yeah,
the
you guys
proper
would do the
channels,
investigations
and they would say
sometimes.
we need an
Yeah.
internal done
Right.
on this allegation, and we would do this.
Right.
And there was no favor.
That's
You
great.
know, and people were
And if it was
arrested.
that clear, I would presume the unions would just back up.
You know,
because
I-
they
and
have
they-
to represent the other members.
Yes, and the perception that I think you get from maybe television or the average person gets, it's not really like that. The unions aren't going to bat for everybody immediately and trying to keep them from losing their job when they've been accused of
Right.
something terrible.
I had an experience locally, and it was that's why I have that comment.
Yeah.
They just were fighting to
Yeah.
keep the officer.
Well, it
And
does happen in-
Unfortunately, he lost in the hearing that we had. So.
Sure. I mean, it does happen, and
Right.
they have a function, a protective function, but in general, it doesn't. You see kind of a perception on television and whatnot about they're just going to bat, and this guy girl did something horrendous, and it's not quite
No,
like that.
And the state police they're just so impressive. Almost every one of them, for sure. And when I've gone to graduations, you see them and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Or in parades or something, you feel very proud.
Well, we're
They're a
great.
group.
Anybody who wants it for some. I just knew I was going to be there, so this could go to the dovetail to the SRO discussions. That's a great program.
Yeah.
I was in the 3rd grade, so that's a long time ago, and a state trooper came in by the name of Rock. You probably know
wow.
David
Yeah,
Rock.
David Rock, oh my
His
gosh.
name is spelled
Yes,
R-O-Q-U-E, I
Right.
think, or it's Rock. And
I
it
know
just,
him.
as a third grader,
Yeah.
it blew me away. And you know, I have a history.
What does that say about me if I know David Rock? Speaking of
I mean,
age.
I have and it was, the state police had the bicycle safety program, which was a big, you know, was an important thing for the community then, and that was a good way to be in touch with the community
Right.
and have good community relations for that sort of thing. And
That's
it made a lasting impression on me. I have history, a lot of history in my family, but I grew up in Vermont, in Barrie, and my parents are Bostonians, so a lot of that history's there. So it wasn't like a direct, I was living it.
Right.
But anyway, it's a good thing. It's communication, it's understanding, it's another person with maturity and life experience that can help an adolescent in the high school years.
Yeah.
And the departments work really hard to select the person
Yeah.
who's good at that,
Right.
who's good at
Right.
communicating with young people. And that not every cop is,
Yep.
but they select that person and they train them, special
great.
training and so on and so forth. And it's just an enormous benefit. It really
Well,
is.
we used to have the former chief of police here in Montpelier, and he put together these Team 2, and it's bringing together social workers, like mental health professionals,
Yes.
with law enforcement. And if they have and there was somebody else they brought in, but just to analyze the situation, if they know they've got a mental health problem, they bring these people together. They're used to working together, they understand each other, and they're much better able to calm things down, because I feel bad with the opioids and the mental health, that you're out there and they more want you to work as social workers these days rather than doing law enforcement jobs, I think.
But I know Burlington, the Burlington City Police have had a program for a long time. And their outreach counselors and such have gone out, and they've combined with the police, and they've been out on the streets, and they've done that for a long time. So there's been variations of this going on. I can't speak to the details of
Right.
that, but there's been variations. And when you're a police officer, when you come out of the academy, you're like a deer with a caught in the headlights.
Exactly.
But then when you're on a while, you become an amateur psychologist,
Yeah.
and you really learn a lot. You don't go to people's birthday parties and bar mitzvahs and that sort of thing, and anniversary parties. You don't do that. You go to the problems. And when you go there, you've seen them before at times, and you understand, you know how to talk to people, and you can help a lot of people. But the people that, the social workers, they obviously spend all of their education, all their
Right.
careers, and they definitely are great resources to have. There's a team concept out there, and it should be continued. But then we often protect social workers in violent
For sure,
situations.
for
And
sure.
the sad part of it is, where there's some violent situations and folks that have gotten in that position that they just end badly.
Right.
And nobody wants that, but it does happen.
That's great. Jennifer, we'll close out the show.
I agree. But why do you think you are the best candidate for the position?
I think I'm the best candidate because I'm not a politician. I love Vermont. I love my community, and like I said, I grew up here, and I just want this to make this a great place, an affordable place. Keep it as a safe place, and I have an aptitude to serve. So I'm happy to serve, put the time in, do the job, work very hard for the people in Essex.
You've certainly served all your life, so thank you very much, Tom. Thanks for coming
thanks
on.
for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
We
Thank you,
appreciate
Jennifer.
your eavesdropping in on the show here, and we'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the soundbite.